I start with an armature, and I make my armatures out of steel and aluminium, so aluminium wire, copper wire on really small, thin things. And I make my armatures so that I can articulate them on the joints. I'm not very good at doing preliminary drawing or sketches or anything, but I have an idea, and then I will bend the armature into the position that I want to do it rather than getting a pen out and rub it out. I use an arc welder for making my armatures. They don't need to be neat and tidy, they just need to be strong. And the great thing about an arc welder is you can heat up metal and you can bend it. You can also cut metal with it. I then normally work in clay plasticine. If I'm working in a hot country, I use Chavant. It's basically a high-grade plasticine. It's sulfur-free. Some plasticines have sulfur in, which reacts with silicon rubber. So these hares I've made out of a natural clay. I am sculpting them out of a locally sourced natural clay, which is really lovely. It's really quite wet. It's very organic. It's quite groggy. It's full of bits. Some of it's quite hard. Some of it's quite soft. I quite often work on 2 or 3 of the same subject at any one time. While I've got it in my head, it's more sort of efficient to do, I find, to do 2 or 3 of the same subject. Predominantly wildlife, and I spend quite a lot of time trying to look at wildlife in its own habitat. When I first started, I came back from Kenya, and I went out to Kenya traveling, aged about 18, 19, and I got involved with relocating Rhino and was seeing all this amazing stuff going on. So I bought some beeswax, made a load of sculptures, and I'd been sculpting, but I wasn't thinking it was something you can make a living out of. And I went to go and talk to Mark Koreth. He's a really good wildlife sculptor, and he's he's a top man. And I went to go and spend a morning with him, and I had a cheetah head that I'd made out of beeswax. And I walked into his house, and the cheetah head was over there on the shelf. He'd sculpted it from the same cheetah. It's a total coincidence. The point was, I wasn't copying him, but we'd all made the same things because that's what we were doing. And I asked him about it, and he said, as long as you do it your way, it doesn't matter. None of us can say that we're not influenced by other artists. In the early days, Mark Koreth, Dylan Lewis, Jonathan Kenworthy, Bear Bugatti, and lots of other ones were a huge inspiration. You do it your way. If I'm planning a research trip, and let's take Africa, it's the easy one, and I've been going to Labour Wildlife Conservancy for quite a long time, and I know what I can go and find there. Yeah. So I'd go out there with a box full of blocked out armatures, so I'd have an idea of what I want to make before I arrive, and I would make an armature of a lion and an armature of a lioness head, so that when I'm then there working from life, I'm not doing all the blocking out and the sort of easy bit. By making small sculptures, I find quite often I'd go abroad, look at an animal in its habitat, make a small sculpture, get the animal in my head, and then come back here and make a bigger one in a more controlled environment. This is one of the armatures of the 6 horses, which I did in 2014. And you can see how I basically make a bone section, and the whole thing would have had a chicken wire, a layer of chicken wire on it to hold the clay. I quite like trying to leave a sort of history of the mark making and not hide it. I think if you make something and you put energy into making it and you leave that energy there, it gives the final thing an energy. It was a Berkeley home development, and it's in Goodman's Fields in London. They put 6 life and a quarter size horses running through the main piazza. It was a really fun commission, it was good. A good quote about wildlife sculpture is you should be able to look at it in the eye and see life. And I think eyes are the most important part of any sculpture.